Meno was a dialogue written by Plato, and like many of his dialogues, it has Socrates as one of the interlocutors, if not the main interlocutor. Along with him is, of course, the titular Meno. The leading question is whether virtue can be taught or if it is something that is strictly inherent in nature. However, to uncover that, one must first understand what exactly virtue is. Now, that is not the main aim of this video. Today, you and I will try to comprehend not what virtue is, rather, this video aims to be a dissemination of a specific part of the dialogue. For some context, as the Socratic dialogue goes on, and the first question eventually branches into many, one that is brought up by Meno is whether one can successfully inquire into the absolute unknown. Socrates essentially says that one can, and the way he comes to that resolution is what will be examined in this video essay. When Meno asks the question of whether we can inquire into the unknown with any chance of success, Socrates asks Meno to call for one of his attendants. This attendant was born and brought up in Meno's household, so when we are told that the attendant is not educated, we know that this is a fact. Socrates then begins asking the attendant a spate of mathematical questions based on simple geometry, a square. We needn't go into detail about the actual questions. Knowing that the questions are based on simple math is enough. The attendant answers all of the questions correctly. So, predicated on this, Socrates comes to a conclusion that the soul is immortal, and when it is in the form of a soul, it is incredibly learned. How so? Well, because of the accretive knowledge gained when the soul was manifested in the physical form is imbued into the soul, and once the physical body dies and the soul comes to take hold of a new body, that knowledge passes on. Except that the new body, the new consciousness, cannot immediately recall that knowledge. Rather, it is stored in a deep, dark, and nebulous recess of one's mind, where one must reach far back into it to take control. As is exemplified by the attendant, whose label of being uneducated belied the knowledge from previous lives that he has. And in that sense, everybody has. Essentially, Socrates augments the idea of metempsychosis by adding an epistemological aspect to it. Now, let us get into the interpretation of this part of the dialogue, which has ended up being more of a disagreement than an agreement. The first point is that this answer to a question that is grounded in reality and perfectly reasonable and rational only works when one believes in the concept of the immortal soul. No offense is intended towards those who believe in metempsychosis, but I postulate that not everybody in the world believes in it. Hence, this answer only caters towards a certain demographic, and especially since answers are a sort of truth, Socrates' solution cannot really be accepted since truth must be objective and applicable to all unless it is a relative truth, but that is a different matter. In fact, I have a video on it, so do check it out if you are interested. But let us proceed with the notion of metempsychosis and eternal knowledge. This theory would account for the fact that everybody is not equally smart and everybody is skilled in different things. But if the soul is immortal, then where did it start and where will it end? Did it begin with the first human and will it end with the last? No, because if the soul has a state beyond the human form, then it should not end with the last human. So then what happens to the soul and what happens to all of the knowledge? Another point is that it is not information and neither is really knowledge that is imbued into the soul. Rather, it is values, qualities, and general skills like dexterity, being more adept with the quantitative, being more adept with the qualitative. Because knowledge is built in the individual lifetime through years of experience, the resultant wisdom is not neatly packaged into a hand-me-down gift for the next person. Why? Because it requires those years of experience. Skills and characteristics are inherent, and thus they could come from the soul. But if they are inherent, then it would not have been gained in the previous lifetime or in the previous lifetime to that, and so on and so on. So when were these inherent values ever gained? Lastly is the question of why there must be the concept of an immortal soul to answer this question. The attendant has not done something incredibly complex. Moreover, the attendant is uneducated, but not illiterate, though that is not mentioned. In any case, the attendant can parse all of the questions, can understand the numbers and the functions. Why? Because it is logical. The answers can be reasoned towards since they are not so complex that one actually requires some mathematical background. And that is the point, that humans are not a husk, but are actually capable of developing a mind on their own through sense perception. This concept was also discussed in another video of mine on my YouTube channel, so do check that out as well if you want more details about it. But in short, the capacity for sense perception helps build experience and knowledge, which are written on the blank slate of a child's mind. As more things are written, rules and concepts are formed, which gives way to the building of logic and reason. Now, this notion, created by the Epicureans and augmented further by the Stoics, is not as simple as this. So, again, do check out the video, but this brief explanation should serve for now. So, if humans can build logic and rationale as they grow, then why can't it be the case with this attendant? Why must there be an immortal soul? This aspect of epistemology was found during the times post Plato's approximate death, so it's not that this theory was around, but Socrates did not agree with it. It's simply that it hadn't been thought of yet. So it is not a case of Socrates' ignorance, but more of an example of how new triumphs in science disprove the erstwhile theories. This was my interpretation of this part of the dialogue, Meno. My perspective is, of course, not dogma, and I would guess that some disagree with me, and if you do write it in the comments.